Hello there, mind shifters. I am Maggie. Welcome to the other side of the story. A special episode 2, the stepmother. She wasn't born cruel. She was just never allowed to fall apart. So everybody knows the stepmother was wicked, cold, calculating, jealous. She made Cinderella scrub floors and sleep in cinders while her own daughters were dressed in silk. She stood between a young girl and her happiness and smiled while doing it. That's the story we were told. But let me ask you something. What if the stepmother could tell her side of the story? She was a widow first, before she was everyone's stepmother. Before the title that history would use to define and condemn her, she was a woman who had lost her husband, who had buried someone, who had held her daughter's hands in the dark and whispered that everything would be all right, while inside she was quietly breaking. And then she did what women of her time were required to do. She survived, she remarried, she built again. She brought her daughters into a new house, a new life, a new man who came with his own history and his own child, a child with her mother's eyes perhaps, her mother's smile, a child the whole world seemed to find effortlessly lovable in a way that made everything just a little bit harder to navigate. Nobody asked how she felt about that. Nobody asked what it was like to watch her husband's eyes soften for another woman's daughter, to feel her own girls become somehow less noticed, less celebrated, less chosen, simply because another child existed in the same place. She had already lost once. She could not afford to lose again, so she did what wounded people do when they have no language for their pain and no space to fall apart. She controlled what she could, the household, the hierarchy, the story being installed inside those four walls. Because if she could not guarantee love, she could at least guarantee order. If she could not make her daughters chosen, she could at least make them visible. Was it fair to Cinderella? No. Was it kind? No. But was it the behavior of a monster or the behavior of a woman completely alone with her fear, her grief, her love for her daughters, and absolutely nowhere to put any of it? The story needed a villain to make the magic work. She was the most convenient candidate, a woman, a stepmother, older, harder, less sparkly than the girl by the fire. So the story made her wicked. I never once asked what made her that way. Now, let's turn the lens because this isn't really about the stepmother in a fairy tale. Who in your life have you labeled wicked without once asking what they were carrying? Whose hardness, whose control, whose inability to just be warm and open and generous, and have you read as cruelty when underneath it might be someone who was never given a safe place to be soft? Someone who loved fiercely but badly, who protected desperately but clumsily, who was doing the only things they knew how to do with a heart that had already been broken once and couldn't survive being broken again. And the harder question, where have you become her? Where have you controlled because you couldn't cope? Protected so fiercely that you caused harm? Loved so desperately that it came out sideways, looking nothing like love from the outside? What is the part of you that the world has labeled difficult, cold, too much, that is actually just a person who was never once asked how they were doing? So this is a workout mind shift tool too, because the villains we inherit from stories are almost always just people whose pain was never given a name. And the villains we create in our own lives, the ones we've decided about, written off, stopped trying to understand, they deserve the same question. Not what did they do, but what happened to them? Because when you can hold both those questions at the same time, that's when real understanding becomes possible. When you change the lens, you don't just find their humanity, you find your own. This is the other side of the story. If this one made you think of someone you've given up on or a version of yourself you'd judge too harshly, sit with that. That's where the shift begins. If this series has moved something in you, if one of these stories cracked something open, I want to hear about it. Share it in the comments. Tell me which one landed. And if you are ready to go deeper, to do this work at a level of your own lens, you know where to find me. It's Mindshift 202. Because the other side of your story is waiting to be told.
This has been The Other Side of the Story. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying this content and want to see more of it, please hit the subscribe button.